finding people was always a challenge, but now it's slightly less of a challenge than it was before because of those so many layoffs. Now the problem got transformed into we have a problem finding people, but we have a problem paying people what they request.
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 220. What are the top challenges for implementing DevOps? Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darren and Victor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darren reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Victor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. Victor, many times people come to us and say, hey, we're trying to put DevOps in our company.
Nobody's trying anymore. Everybody's DevOps already. What do you mean?
That's what you would think.
Yeah?
I've heard conversations very recently. It's like, what's this continuous integration that you're talking about?
Oh, but that's not related with DevOps. Everybody's DevOps now. Whether we know what is continuous integration, that's a different question.
Oh, so everybody's just DevOps.
Everybody's DevOps. Now that became the de facto standard, right? Because why would you not be DevOps?
As compared to being what?
Whatever you were before. There is no good reason. The only real cost to DevOps is new business cards.
That's probably a quotable tweet there.
That's the only cost. Everything else is you just rename yourself and that's it. You're DevOps. Come on. You know you're better than that, Darren. You know that.
By the way, if you're listening to this and you actually want to see us talk about this, this is another one of our episodes where we're actually doing video as well. So you can go and watch this on YouTube. So if you want to listen to it. Great. We'll try to make it. We're not showing anything. If you listen to the last one where it's like, come on, quit clicking around that tech radar from ThoughtWorks. I don't know what you're talking about. This one, there's nothing to show. So you can just listen. You don't have to go watch, but if you want to, you can. So the question is, what are some challenges that organizations face when trying to implement DevOps?
I feel it's the same challenge like the challenges we had with any other process change, like with Agile, right? We just go for it. We use the same people to effectively do the same job, expecting that the outcome will be different. Now with DevOps, just as before we were Agile, and just as, let's face it, many companies are still doing waterfallish something, right? And it's been, how long it's been? 15 years? 20 plus? There we go, right? Almost all companies actually improved with Agile, but realistically, they're still far away, right? It's more like minor improvements than drastic improvements that are required. I feel that the same is happening with DevOps. And what I see, I will put those changes into two buckets. One would be, we take people, we rename them from ops or continuous integration specialists or database something or whatever, whoever is first to change the title. We become DevOps now. That would be the DevOps engineer, DevOps that works in a DevOps team, right? And what is missing mostly from that is the dev part. We're still not developing solutions. And we are at the same time, and I'm going to let you pick whichever you want, right? We are either not in a separate team and we are not developing really. We are doing some kind of integrations. Or we are developing because we are still individually not developing, but we are part of a team that actually does develop something. And then that would be closer to my definition of DevOps, right? Kind of, okay, so, hey, he's Joe. He understands how production works. Can he join your team? And then he would not be called DevOps, but the team would be doing DevOps. So I'm going to let you pick and choose, kind of whichever of those two you want. Kind of, are we talking about DevOps team as if team that develops applications and has both development and operational knowledge, or you want to be DevOps team, meaning I'm doing ops, but now I'm calling myself DevOps engineer, right?
Well, I would say most places are the latter.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Shouldn't such a team be, or such a person rather be called SRE?
Yes. In today's
Right?
world, they should be called an SRE.
Exactly. So DevOps engineer should be called SRE. And actually, it might even be even better paid. Maybe. I'm actually honestly surprised that people are not jumping into becoming SRE instead of DevOps engineer, whatever that is. There is an important potential problem with SRE, and that's that I'm paraphrasing now the sentence because I did not memorize it, but it goes something along the line: what would happen if I give developers the task to do operations? So that might be the problem why SREs are less often, why people are less often SREs, right? Because I feel that most people are jumping from the ops bucket into DevOps / SRE, and then it's kind of somehow easier to be called DevOps, really, because SRE is supposed to write code more than anything else.
I think our real problem today, DevOps, the term, Patrick's one of our friends. He was the guy that coined the term. How many? Almost decades ago. But now here we are roughly in the middle of 2023. We have this AI revolution going on. We've got data streaming going on, which is feeding into the AI. It's all built up. If you tried to do DevOps 10 years ago, you were saying, okay, I'm going to be using Ansible, Jenkins, Terraform was early. Even this, public cloud was early. Looking back at 2013.
Oh, yeah.
Now 10 years on, I think people trying to get to that point are in worse shape unless they're within organizations that are still just now getting to the 2012 and 2013 timeline. I think that's the problem, is what we say is DevOps, we can't say what we used to know is still true. I think it's based in truth, but I don't believe it's the truth anymore.
My explanation is that, and this is not specific to DevOps or any of those things, is that every advancement is misunderstood 90%, but then it's still beneficial because those 10% are moving us forward. So it's a net gain.
It is a net gain, but at what cost?
Stagnation. The cost is, the alternative is stagnation.
So the people that are moving fast today, if people weren't already moving along in the past, they kept on churning out, they were still waterfall, or still are waterfall. And they haven't even gotten to the point of doing continuous integration today. And they were trying to do that 10 years ago. How much harder is it going to be to get to continuous integration today with all the other things that are coming at us from a business perspective?
That's okay. Survival is optional, Darren.
Oh, interesting.
It's not guaranteed.
Well, that's a sad way to think about things.
Not necessarily. There is a big demand. People still have jobs, not necessarily in the same place.
You mean like at MySpace?
In everybody's space.
That was a social media joke and you didn't catch it. That's fine.
Ah, MySpace. Okay,
MySpace.
okay. Now, Now I'm getting it. That just proves that. I mean, I'm hardly using even Twitter. How do I know what is MySpace, man? And I do have a daughter, but I think that she's too young to know what that is. So I'm not hearing that expression.
Okay. Well, I couldn't think of any other more recent tech. MySpace really wasn't a tech failure. It just went away.
It probably contributed quite a lot to what we have today. So most of the time when something goes away, actually, from end user perspective, it looks like, oh, this was a disaster. It went away. But very often, actually, it paid way to whatever we have today. Like Heroku, from my perspective, is mostly gone away. But Heroku contributed to so many things that we have today. So many things we wouldn't have today if it wasn't for Heroku. Even though it's mostly gone. I'm apologizing in advance to all sub friends, but
it's still fine. It's still operational.
No.
But would you pick Heroku as your number one today?
I don't think that many do.
You're going to pick probably because development processes have changed. If you listen to the other live episode or the video episode that we did to where I was complaining about JavaScript and TypeScript, you have the Vercels and the Cloudflares and the everybody else that didn't exist before.
And also new guy, the old guard, the big guys are also having it now as well, right? We have Lightsail. It's not really Heroku-like, but it's not that far. Google Cloud Run, Azure Container Apps. So we have small players. Vercel, we have big players. There is a huge competition, right?
So the challenge is, maybe this is one of the challenges, is just keeping up.
Oh, yeah.
If your organization has been playing catch up for the past decade, and time, especially around 2020 when the whole global thing happened, things sped up. Who would have thought that remote work was going to be a normal thing for almost 3 years? At least for our space. Not my space, our space.
You know what was the biggest mistake of Heroku? Too early. They were too good for their own sake. Imagine if Heroku started when Docker was already raging and when Kubernetes just started. If that was the moment in time that they started Heroku with more mature technology, because Docker matured containers, right? And at the intersection of just emerging technology that turned up in retrospective that is here to stay, Kubernetes. If at that moment Heroku started, and also that was the moment when we were all more perceptible towards such a solution, right? Less afraid of such solution, right? I know that most people were not afraid of Heroku, but as individuals. But companies, Heroku at that time,
it wasn't normal. You didn't just hand over, here's a zip file of my code. It would build it for you, would deploy it for you, run it for you.
Just as I can argue that Mesos started too early. Thanks to Mesos, we have many of the things we have today. It was too early for its own good.
It is still technically alive. I thought it had gone to the attic, but it was saved from the attic.
So Mesos is going to outlive Swarm. And the reason why I'm saying that is that Mesos had serious production adoption. Not maybe with thousands of, not all 100 Fortune 500 companies, but there were some really big companies that adopted Mesos for production, which was not that much true for Swarm. So it will continue living longer because there is a bigger necessity. Once it enters production, it doesn't go out, right?
Because that could have ended up in production almost 9 years ago now, I guess. 14, 15 timeframe. But at that point, I would not have picked Kubernetes.
No, of course not. Of course not.
So it's once we have these shifts in whatever's happened. So we had Mesos to Kubernetes. We had the global pandemic, which moved us into remote work. to where many companies would say there's no way that work can get done unless you are in the office from 9 to 5. And then all of a sudden, everybody was working from home. And guess what? For a lot of companies, revenue went through the roof.
It did. And then...
Now, although that doesn't sound like a challenge,
through the ceiling,
it's a huge challenge.
from the roof
and
through the ceiling.
to the floor. Yeah. For some.
Yeah.
Some are still doing okay. But it's, that is a challenge because all of a sudden, all the best laid plans, typically companies, especially in the tech sector, have their big sales kickoffs in January, February, March. All the plans were in place. And then all of a sudden, everything was shut down. No more people getting on planes. No in-person meetings. Those are challenges.
Oh, yeah.
But how do those challenge? Well, the reason why that is if you're not having face-to-face meetings, and this can be argued a lot. Again, I'm biased. I haven't worked full-time in an office since 2007. Full-time. I haven't worked for a company that has had an office to work in since 2001. I mean, there's been offices, but
Wait,
you get my drift, right?
That doesn't make sense. So you haven't worked in a company that has the office for 2001, but you haven't been in office since 2007. Where were you during those 6 years?
6 years. 6 years I was on a plane going to client sites.
Okay.
So there was an office, but I didn't work in the office. My company's office I didn't work in. I was on client sites. But it's those kinds of things to where I'm used to not being in an office. And I've had that privilege for over 20 years in some way, shape, or form. Was I working in offices? Yes. Did I always have to be there? No, I didn't. But back then, here's the real challenge. Back then, we didn't have, in a lot of places in the world, we didn't have fiber to the house. Now we've got either really good high-speed internet through cable or we have fiber. Either are okay.
But that's because you live in, what's the name?
First class world? First class?
No. You live in a non-urban area.
Correct. I don't live in a rural area.
Rural area. There we go. That's the word.
I live really close to one. I'm right on that edge. But even yet, I'm getting fiber now. Funny enough, different story. When I lived in Texas back in the 90s, a friend of mine got fiber in 98 in his house. 98. And now 25 years later, I'm getting it. It takes time. Trust me, in the States. Oh, yeah. But having those things now help reduce some of those challenges. But now we have to have people, look, we're doing a podcast. We actually sound pretty good. I don't know how many other podcasts you listen to or our listeners listen to, but we try to have the best possible audio sound that we can. How many Zoom meetings or Google Meets do you get on and the person sounds like they're across the room and is my mic on? Is my mic on? Can you hear me? They don't understand what
the answer with a positive or a negative spin.
Those are one of the things that bugs me a lot. That's a challenge, is people don't understand that, okay, now that we're not sitting face-to-face in an office or across a table, look, wear headphones if you're on a call. I know it's inconvenient. I'm sorry. Cutting out the background noises as much as you can. Those things matter. Because now, if you want to actually work from home and never go back to an office, set up your home office like you don't ever go back to the real office.
But that has its own challenges as well.
It does.
Do you remember a video that was the main attraction in one of the DevOps worlds?
Which one?
I created video, something about Jenkins. And everybody gathered to see that video. And I came, what the heck? I'm not that popular. And you saw my girlfriend and my daughter crawling behind me because I was working from the living room at that time, right? Literally on all fours behind me, right? And that's the downside of that whole home working situation, right? You have a space dedicated, that's fine. I have it right now, but for many people,
They don't.
they don't.
But again, to me, even if you don't have a dedicated space, and this is where I'm getting back to, I don't care if you're sitting on the couch. Wear headphones. Do something to help block out noise around. It's just, okay. And we're sort of getting off of, what are the challenges of putting DevOps in an organization. But I think in order for you to be effective as a DevOps engineer, as an SRE, as whatever, set up your tooling so you can communicate better. It all boils down to communication. That's what I'm trying to get to. Make your communication better. And one thing I need to communicate about is our sponsor for today.
Oh.
We have a sponsor today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to read this. So we're going to see how this goes again. Now, if you watch the other video, I went way off script. I'm going to try to stay on script this time. So let's see how it goes.
I'm not speaking this time.
You really? Are you sure?
Look at this, muted.
Okay, he's muted now. So here we go. Are you ready to spice up your life? Okay, this is already going off the rails, but that's okay. While you optimize your DevOps infrastructure, meet Barbaro Mojo, the delicious Cuban hot sauce with a kick that's sponsoring today's episode. Barbaro Mojo brings the heat with their unique Cuban marinade mojo base, adding an unforgettable flavor to your favorite dishes. With flavors like, here we go, El Habanero, Alabo, Pinazzo, and Best Day Ever. Again, come on. Really? Make the last one easy. There's a perfect match for everyone's taste buds. As a DevOps Paradox listener, you're entitled to an exclusive 25% discount on your first order. Just visit barbaromojo.com and use the promo code DevOps25, that's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 5 at checkout to claim your discount. Now trust me, you don't want to miss this chance to taste the best Cuban hot sauce out there. So go ahead and order your bottle of Barbaro Mojo today, and remember to use the promo code DevOps25, that's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 5, to get 25% off your first order. The link for that will be down in the show notes or in the description on YouTube. Thanks to Barbaro Mojo for sponsoring today's episode. See, that's communication right there.
There we go. Now we know you know how to read.
I can
read. It's a living proof.
I can. That's a challenge that I have mostly overcome. What are other challenges? I still think this whole, from 10 years ago to now, people trying, okay, I'm going to say it. You read Phoenix Project, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you have not read Phoenix Project, you should read it. But let's put it in context. It was written over 10 years ago, or right at 10 years ago. The stories still ring true. Big enterprise.
And forever will.
And forever will. And forever will. However, things have changed if you are not working in big enterprise organization. If you're working in smaller organizations, startups, those same stories they apply. There's learnings from that. But 10 years ago, 9 years ago, we were able to take DevOps, we were able to take Phoenix Project and almost use it as a playbook. I don't know that you could do that today unless your organization is still stuck back in the early 2010s.
But, the good news is that the percentage of companies that are changing with such a slow rate that the gap is getting bigger and bigger. The percentage of those companies getting smaller and smaller. Not necessarily because they're transforming, but because there are more and more people are in tech, right? So kind of the pie is becoming bigger, and those companies are more or less having the same piece of that pie. So more and more people actually are working in a really good environment. And when I say environment, actually in enterprises are good environments as well, just to make it clear. But I mean more from the technical perspective, from the process perspective, something closer to today.
And I think that's in general true. But there are still a good number of laggards that are still not caught up yet.
Again, survival is optional.
You're talking about on an individual level, correct? Not a company level.
On company level. I'm talking about company level, not individual.
10 years ago, I was 10 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
I can do math, right? So now what am I now? I'm 57. Yeah, I'm going on 57 right now. That means I'm getting closer to not doing a day job, closer every day. Hopefully. Right? I'm not getting closer back to playing out the Benjamin Button movie. I'm not getting younger. I'm getting older. So at that point, the challenge becomes, if I ever did leave my current company, what would I go do? I enjoy learning, so I wouldn't mind going to a startup. But at the same time, the comfort of going into a big enterprise or government, oh dear, that warm security blanket starts to sound pretty good.
Oh, yeah. And also, it's very fuzzy to me what is a startup these days. I have a theory that startup is any company that was created since year 2000, let's say. No matter the size, the age, or whatever. Did you ever hear about a startup who stopped being a startup? I never heard of such a company. We are not a startup anymore. Okay, let's put it this way. Did you ever see an announcement that's saying, Company XYZ stopped being a startup and now is something else?
Yeah, they have graduated from being a startup to becoming a
real company.
A startup. Yeah, or whatever, yeah. It's such a bad phrase.
I'm guessing, so what would be your guess? I'm guessing you don't know for certain, but for example, is HashiCorp a startup? After it passed the IPO even, right?
Yeah, it did. So you can't, to me, if you're already public, I don't think you can be classified as a startup. You can still retain startup culture items within your organization. I think that's fair, but I don't believe you're a startup anymore.
We should have in Friday stream a news section, kind of like who graduated from a startup.
Just so there should be something like the CNCF landscape, to where you have sandbox, incubation, and graduated, and then we just need to put companies into each of those blocks there. Startup
that earns money, and not startup. And I think that 99% would be in the first category, 1% in the second, and the third category would be empty, right? Unless it's older than year 2000.
Could be. Yeah, and probably not 2000, but interesting thought there. What else are the challenges today? Is it finding the right skilled people? I mean, this goes back again to the pandemic level. People were jumping ship. So you lost headcount, whether it was good headcount or bad headcount. And now you're having to reskill people to do things the X way.
Finding people was always a challenge, but now it's slightly less of a challenge than it was before because of those so many layoffs. Now the problem got transformed into we have a problem finding people, but we have a problem paying people what they request. Right? Because all those layoffs from Googles of the world are expecting unreasonable amounts these days. Probably it will not last. Okay, half a year.
Well, it's not that it's unreasonable. It's just that it's unreasonable to companies that aren't used to paying that kind of wage.
Exactly. Oh, depends. I have a theory, and whomever calls me in public to prove it, I have no proof. This is completely theory based on nothing. But I think that big companies are partly doing layoffs because they realize that it's slightly insane, the economical situation they gotten them into. You know, kind of like 500, 600, 700, 800,000 plus shares.
Plus shares, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because we obviously cannot give you the full amount that you deserve. So it's going to be 600K plus shares, because we cannot pay the full price in cash.
So that's, to me, still West Coast thinking. I've always lived on the East Coast. So I still can't wrap my head around that level of what it costs.
Power to you. If you're one of those getting close to 7 digits, you have my full respect.
What about the people that are actually doing multiple jobs right now? That's a different challenge. Because this has been the other thing that's spun out of pandemic is some people are working multiple jobs.
You mean multiple full-time jobs or more like
multiple full-time
consulting
jobs.
for... Okay.
Multiple, signed on and working for multiple full-time jobs.
I would guess, again, don't call me out on that. I would guess that within the world as a whole, we are probably more privileged and less forced to do that than most of the others. I have that story that I think that software engineers are like spoiled brats compared to everybody. I'm ashamed actually to talk about our conditions of work and salaries to somebody who is not in tech. You believe that? I'm literally ashamed. I'm not exaggerating now. I'm being exploited. And then if I tell the figure to anybody outside of the tech, or the work condition, or the rights, or the benefits, I don't do that anymore. But not because I want to hide what they earn and stuff like that, but it's more like if I speak with normal person outside tech, I'm a spoiled brat. Me. So I cannot say that for others, but I am.
Well, the thing that's interesting is if you were to probably look at our hourly rates, we're making less hourly than plumbers and electricians and the skilled trades right now.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime plumber comes out, I'm paying them $125, $150 an hour, plus a trip charge, plus fill in the blank. Now, they're not getting all that money. I know that because they're working for a company.
Yeah, exactly. And also they have that time. You pay that hourly rate for, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever hours, but he spent an hour to get to you. He spent an hour to get out of you and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's not a good gig, but I'm not sure that at the end of the month, they're better off. I'm not sure.
Well, I do know some people that do underwater welding.
Oh, now we're talking. Now we're talking. Repairing Titanic, of course.
Those guys make some money.
Oh, yeah. But then if you want to compare them, you compare them with people who work on mainframe and actually have to work on space shuttle software before it gets retired. Compare apples with apples.
That's the problem. Okay, there's a challenge. Is can business actually compare apples to apples? Anything else that we want to talk about on challenges? We talked about, labor force, working conditions, meaning not good, bad, or different, just working locations. Home versus in office versus wherever.
Not necessarily, but I want to make a public statement in hope that I will be the first person on earth to coin that term. DevSec AI Ops. And I will Google the internet later to see whether anybody else said it before me. I want to be a next-gen innovator. Yes.
Okay. Well, here's DevSec AI Ops. Because at the time
TM.
we're recording this...
Trademarked. I dare you now to use that term.
So... it's not on first page.
That's it. Then it doesn't exist. If it's not on first page of Google, it doesn't exist, man.
Okay. So by the time you're actually listening to this, we will probably own that domain name. So you will find something there. I'm going to check one other tool. Again, nobody can see that. Well, actually, yeah, you can't see this because I'm not doing this. Oh, I'm not logged into this tool. I can't look it up. So DevSec AI Ops.
No. DevSec Ops AI. Because then I can get the AI domain.
Ops.ai. Let's see. Hang on. Oh, that's already been purchased.
Oh, I promised I will not swear, and I didn't do it. Okay, then DevSec AI Ops it is.
Yeah, I was just trying to.
It's going to be all the rage. I'm looking for sponsors to buy a booth on KubeCon. If you want to kind of chip in to have a booth, DevSec AI Ops incorporated. Let's start business. I'm looking for investors. Seed investment first.
And what do they get for their seed?
The opportunity to tap into the AI market. What do you mean what? Isn't it obvious?
Oh dear.
There is a strong demand. I mean, if you were talking, the challenges of DevOps, right? And I'm going to put security into that. The challenges, that's the initial premise of this episode, right? The main challenge is that there is no AI in it.
So
That's the main challenge.
To add AI.
If we need AI,
will solve all the things. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Isn't that obvious? What's wrong with you, Darren, today? You're kind of like stumbling upon obvious things.
I guess I don't have my marketing hat on today because I'm just not seeing it. So what do you think? Should Victor buy DevSec Ops? What did you say? DevSec AI Ops.
DevSec AI Ops.
Here. DevSec Ops. No, DevSec. Good grief. AI Ops. Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're going, what are they doing?
.io, right? That's a cool
so
domain.
No,
cool
you can do it .ai. So you could do DevSec AI Ops.ai.
Oh, that's a double AI. That's AI squared. So kind of like, if ever somebody comes with the same idea, I have it squared.
Correct.
Come on. It's opportunity. 5 million seed investment will be enough to kick us off. That's just enough for Boot to be platinum sponsor in KubeCon Chicago. Plus all the expenses for my travel and drinks.
No, I think that would only cover the booth fee. The 5 million would only cover. It wouldn't cover anything else. CNCF, I'm sorry for saying that out loud. I don't know how much it is. Anyway, what do you think? Head over to the Slack workspace. You'll see this episode. Who knows what the number is at this point because we're so far off the rails. And,
ask AI.
Ask AI. What's my
exactly
episode number?
Exactly.
You know what? I should have asked AI. Okay, here we have to do this. One last thing. Really, I'm sorry for people that are listening, but you've got to listen to this because I am going to ask ChatGPT, the free version, not the paid version. Our premise question, which, by the way, the premise question came from ChatGPT. See, I know how to do these things. I know how to click a button.
Can we stop recording and then start recording this from scratch and just kind of ask the question as we did at the beginning of the episode? Ask ChatGPT, read the answer, and be finished with it?
No. Well, the answer is yes, but we're not going to. Okay. So I'm asking ChatGPT, what are some challenges organizations may face when implementing DevOps? Okay, so we went the whole time here, and now it's going to tell us the answer. So are you ready for this?
Go for it.
I'm not going to read the leading sentence because you know how ChatGPT does things. I'm going to give the bullet points. The number one is cultural resistance. Gee, go figure. Number two, lack of automation. Number three, integration issues. Number four, skill gaps. Number five, security and compliance. Number six, this is one we didn't get into, tool proliferation. We got the other five in some roundabout ways. But here's the summary sentence from ChatGPT. Organizations must carefully plan and execute their DevOps implementation, taking into account these, isn't this great, and other potential challenges to ensure its success.
Man, this is the exact answer that any self-respectful consultant who goes to a company to transform them into DevOps should give.
Should we just go ahead and say We'll go ahead and type all this up, and then we'll just start selling that instead.
Exactly.
We'll go out on LeanPub and create, here's how you implement DevOps in 2023. Here's the book.
No, not the book. It's going to be
A consulting fee.
Consulting fee, exactly.
Yeah. So here you go. Here's the one-page, $5 million consulting fee.
Exactly. No,
Do
not
these
five.
things
Don't
in
be
your
greedy,
life
man.
is better.
Don't be greedy.
Oh, it's
Million is
4?
enough. We need
Oh,
5
million's
for
okay.
those customers, 1 day each. We have KubeCon covered.
Oh, that's true. If you're listening to this, hopefully you understand we're joking.
I'm not.
And that's how we'll end the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.